Tere tulemast. Hello, everyone. Hope the audio is working. Welcome to the second Zoom community engagement session for KESKUS International Estonian Center. Põhiliselt käib meil jutt inglise keeles, et saab ka järelvaatamise korras need, kes eesti keelega ei ole nii mugavad, aga muidugi küsimusi võib mõlemis keeles esitada, kui selleks on aeg. Our last community engagement session was on March 24th, where we talked about the rebranding. And I think we're all now quite accustomed to referring to the International Estonian Center as KESKUS, International Estonian Center. Today's focus, and if Erik, you could advance to the next slide, please. Today's focus is we will be spending a bit of time on project updates and take a look at some of the highlights from the last quarter since our last community engagement session. But the bulk of what we're going to be talking about today and why a special appeal was sent out to the community groups is to focus on the operating model, both financially and with respect to how weekly activities will be unfolding, or at least get some of the thinking in place for that. There will be plenty of time for questions. This is being recorded. Kindly wait and tap your questions into the chat feature when the presentations are over. Yes, we will have plenty of time for questions and answers, and the hope is that we will then end this meeting at 8 o'clock at the latest. So first off, I would like to introduce Liisa Garrid, who is the board chair of Estonian Arts Center, the charity associated with KESKUS. Liisa is a corporate lawyer, lives near Toronto, and if you'd like to read more about her, please do so on the KESKUS website in the donor profile section. She is also a Viru Vanemad donor. Liisa, I would ask you to take it away.
Aitäh, Helen. The Tere KESKUS campaign took place from June 21st to 24th. If I could ask for the next slide, please. So this was the launch of the public campaign for KESKUS, seeking donations at every level, and the response exceeded all expectations. Please check out the campaign videos on the KESKUS YouTube channel if you have not yet seen them. You can find them on the link at estoniancenter.ca on the Capital Campaign page. Each of the 3 days has about 35 minutes of wonderfully supportive messages, information about KESKUS, and musical entertainment. By way of example, here is Ambassador Kevin Rex, Canada's ambassador to Estonia, with his greeting. Erik?
Bonjour, Tere. My name is Kevin Rex, and I have the great privilege of serving as Canada's ambassador here in beautiful Tallinn, Estonia. You know, I've just seen the new design for the International Estonian Center, and it is gorgeous. I grew up in Toronto, and I know the exact location of the new KESKUS Center, right in the heart of the world's most multicultural city. Canada and Estonia have grown so close over these past 100 years, and this building really pays tribute to that relationship. In fact, when it's completed, the very map of the country of Estonia will be there in the city of Toronto. My congratulations to all of the organizers on this incredible task and their wonderful journey. I can't wait for the grand opening party. I sure hope I'm invited. Elagu Eesti, Elagu Canada, Elagu KESKUS. Thank you. Merci. Aitäh.
So Ambassador Rex's enthusiasm is matched by greetings from Canada, the US, Estonia, and even Iceland. Next slide, please. And the response to the campaign has been similarly international. This slide is the KESKUS website traffic page from mid-June to mid-July. You can see that it evidences interest in KESKUS from around the globe. During the Tere KESKUS campaign, the fundraising site had over 8,300 page views. And next slide. Thanks go to the Torokvei family and an anonymous donor who matched new funds 3-to-1, creating a 4 times impact. This resulted in generation of an additional $830,000. So, together with the match, more than $2.8 million was donated in support of this visionary project. Perhaps even more striking than the amazing dollar amount is the number of new donors and the range of Estonians and friends represented. Next slide, please. From small children sending their tooth fairy money to the summer camps and academic sororities and fraternities, to Anne and Tõnu Saaren family, who generously joined the Kalevipoja laud of donors of $100,000 and above. Indeed, fully 25 new Viru Vanemad donations were made during Tere KESKUS as well. This is the level of giving at 10,000 to 99,000. The remainder were all Kunglarahva donations of up to $9,999. And this is the major point of supporting the KESKUS. It is intended for us all. And so all are invited to take part in helping to make it happen to whatever extent we can. Even the smallest donation is incredibly important in our collective drive to make our KESKUS a reality. Next slide. So overall, donations to Estonian Arts Center, the charity associated with KESKUS, currently sit at over $8.3 million. The donations have come mostly from those geographically close to the center, but almost a quarter of the monies is raised from outside of Ontario, with noteworthy international participation. KESKUS will continue its capital campaign, seeking corporate and individual donations. EAC will publish the full list of donors to the Tere KESKUS campaign. We were asked to wait with that as some organizations wish to make a donation and be included in that list, but needed more lead time. We'll publish in the fall, so there's still time to donate and have your name included. Credit card donations can be made on the capital campaign page. For group gifts, organization or leadership gifts of 10,000 or more, securities or any other questions, please write or call Taimi Hooper, whose contact particulars are on the website. So please encourage your social networks and your families to donate as well. If you haven't already, please sign up for the KESKUS newsletter on the homepage to be kept abreast of project news. And now I'm very pleased to turn this over to David Golm, Development Manager, who will update us on the project progress.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Lisa. I'm just going to give a very quick update today. We're really focusing on other items today. So just quickly, the last time we discussed things which might have been the Estonian House AGM, but we had received comments back from one of the authorities that govern the permit process. We have responded to all those comments and now are in a waiting position, waiting on really one outstanding authority to give us approval and give us a permit. So the permit is very close to being in hand. As such, now we've started, we're going to start the site preparation for construction. So that includes things like doing the site fence, site demolition. There's some internal fencing and some landscaping there that needs to come out. We need to do locates and layouts. That's to make sure we know where all the utilities are and that sort of thing. And then of course, monitoring of the site, mostly for our own due diligence, but also to make sure that the activities over the tunnels are sound. The project is construction ready. We've awarded the critical trades that are at the beginning of the process. They've been very active with seeking the building permit as well. And now they have are basically laying in wait for the moment we have a building permit. If we can go to the next slide. I'd like to touch quickly on the one move option. Everybody obviously is curious about this because as originally stated, when we sold the Estonian house, we had a 21-month lease back period, and that expires May 31st, 2022. That, of course, is going to be too early for us, considering we'll be starting construction in August. So we will need an extension of that lease back to maintain the one move option. But the good news is we're working very closely with the new owner. He is going, or they are going through an approval process just like we did on Madison, perhaps far more complicated than ours was. But we're assured that the leaseback term will meet all the needs of all the stakeholders. Both the new owner and the Estonians will need to have are amenable to an extension. So we haven't finalized it yet, but we are working on it now, and it looks like the timing of the Estonian House project and our project are going to dovetail nicely. So hopefully by the next update, we'll be able to tell you what that extension is. I think now I'm going to pass it on to Veiko Parming. Veiko is an engineer and is president of the Toronto Estonian House, as well as the co-vice chair of both the International Estonian Center, Inc. and Estonian Arts Center. So without further ado, Veiko, please take it away.
Thanks, David. Aitäh kõikidele liitumast tänase õhtuse infokoosolekuga. So I'll provide a little bit of an overview of the business models and work streams and some of the work that has been going on or is going on and is getting underway on some of these different work streams. So I think one key thing to note is that there's really three, at least the way we're thinking about it, there's really three central work streams when it comes to how the new center is going to operate. And those are the commercial tenants, the event business, and the community groups. So the commercial tenants, those would be permanent tenants leasing dedicated space within the building. It would include the Northern Birch Credit Union, for example, and others like it. The event business would include the use of the Grand Hall and really all of the rentable spaces of the center for non-Estonian uses that are going to generate revenue for the center. So those are largely in reference to non-dedicated spaces, although there's a couple of sub-work streams under that as well, which include the bistro as well as the business accelerator that are really part and parcel of that as well. And then the final and really in some ways most important pillar is the community groups, and that's really in reference to the Estonian organizations, which we hope will be key anchor users of KESKUS. So you'll see on this screen there's a few, or on the slide there are a few simplified kind of key steps for each of the work streams, and you'll see the timing or status of some of those. The most advanced work stream so far has been the commercial tenants, and that's been where a lot of the focus has been to date. We've identified the commercial tenants that will essentially fill out all of the, or almost all of the available spaces within the center. And right now the work there is in step 2 as far as getting to negotiate leases and rates with those tenants. So that's work that is really just getting underway. On the event business, there's been some initial exploratory work undertaken to look at some potential types of commercial models for that business. Really, that's something that is sort of just in the process of getting underway. And then as far as community groups, again, it's something that, there has been work done to date. There were those community group sessions already held, was it maybe even a year or two ago? And really, we're looking as of about this meeting going forward to start really focusing on that pillar as well. Next slide, please. So the intention of this slide is to show sort of at a conceptual level what the intention is for how the business model is going to work from a financial sustainability standpoint. And really the key message of this slide is that what we're working towards is a situation where the commercial tenants provide a strong base level of support, which is able to sustain basic building operations, as well as a capital reserve for KESKUS. The commercial tenants, along with the event business, are really anticipated to be the strong backbone that brings in the finances required to both operate the center, save for a capital reserve, and then also cover costs related to event management and promotion and so on, and then ultimately also contribute to an operating surplus from the center. The implication of that is what we're really strongly working towards, is a model where the community groups are not necessarily going to be, from a financial perspective, a make or break function for the center's finances, and therefore will be able to provide very affordable rates to the community groups. Obviously, that's something that has not been the case at Estonia in the past. The funds that come from the community groups are on the order of about 1/8 of the equal to about 1/8 of the costs needed to run Estonia. So they're not the dominant part, but they're still a fairly significant part in terms of finances of Estonia's sustainability. And as we've hit difficult times with Estonia and the event business, we've had to count on both the commercial tenants and the community groups to make Estonia's finances work. But that really is a model that we're very intent on turning on its head in KESKUS, where we anticipate that both the commercial tenants being at market rate in a more desirable building in a more premium location, as well as very much the event business being at market rate, same thing, will drive significantly higher revenues than what we have at Estonia, to where community groups can have affordable rates. In terms of what those rates might look like, that's not something that's really determined yet. It'll come out as part of the process. But in terms of order of magnitude, the thinking there is that it's going to be something in line with kind of marginal costs, so things like consumables and cleaning and so on, which kind of reflect, let's say, a marginal use of the space, but not anything like the market value of that space being used by the organizations. Next slide, please. So this slide is, it's not really the main focus of the meeting today, which is really to talk about KESKUS in the future, the long-term future, but it's an important piece of the puzzle nonetheless, and that is the transition planning from Estonia to KESKUS. Obviously, it's something that is on everybody's mind. There was a letter that was sent out to the community groups maybe a month or two ago, and I understand there may have been a bit of confusion around some parts of the letter. So I was hoping to, in addition to the AGM, use this slide and a bit of time today to hopefully clarify what the priorities are for Estonia on the community group transition to KESKUS. So I'll start with that first row on 2021-22 activities here. It's very much our intention and our focus that community groups that desire to get going again in the fall, or at whatever point they wish to, will be able to enjoy a full year of activities at Estonia going out essentially to May. So there, in terms of target move out dates, we had indicated in the letter that March 31st was the sort of target move out date. I'll get to the next row in a second here, but really the idea of that was intended to be for the groups to be prepared to move out kind of larger things that are not being used on a weekly basis in advance of the sort of final move out date for all activities. So, but it's very much the intention that the actual activities will be able to go through, you know, basically to the end of the lease back as much as possible. So in terms of Estonian House actions, that's focus of our commitment, is to be able to ensure that that availability of space at Eestimaja going at least through to the end of spring. Now, in terms of the physical move, the focus there is really on inventorying and strategizing the assets. So on Eestimaja's side, we're getting to work on inventorying and our own materials that are within the house, which includes just you know, everything from tables and chairs through to the art collection, office equipment, and so on. And what we're requesting of the community groups as well is to identify their own belongings or your belongings that are in Eestimaja. You know, think of some prioritization for future use in terms of what are things that are actively used, what are things that are infrequently used, things that might be archival, maybe some things that are waste or surplus. I know some groups have been more diligent and active with this already in past years, whereas others perhaps haven't. So really our hope is that all of the groups will, you know, basically be actively thinking about all of their belongings in Eestimaja and you know, attaching a level of prioritization to it, which will help with moving over to Eesti KESKUS. Some other things that Eestimaja is focused on there are really facilitating collaboration between the community groups where it makes sense. So we encourage everybody to reach out to Ingrid with any questions or ideas or suggestions that you have, and we want to be open to ideas that where Eestimaja can help facilitate any collaboration. And one thing specifically that we've done is hired 3 summer students with the support of federal grants who have been working at Eestimaja. And really the focus there is on kind of priority areas that where there are a lot of physical materials. So for example, you know, the archives being the central example, as well as the art and the Skaudi and Gaidi you know, archives or materials as well. From a continuity perspective, David talked about it already, but the hope and goal is very much to enable the one move option with an extended lease back on Broadview, so that we'll be able to extend the lease at Broadview up till the point where KESKUS will be open. Of course, as David said, nothing is set in stone there, and we can't really fully count on something that isn't certain. So that's why we're still encouraging the community groups to maintain flexibility on the move out date, and basically to plan for the worst case scenario from a storage perspective, but understanding that we're extremely focused on extending the lease back as the very much the #1 preferred option that we're very hopeful is going to materialize. But all that to say, what we'd like to avoid is a situation where, in terms of from a storage perspective, you know, everybody's counting on being able to move out kind of on the last day or last week or something like that. So we're very much suggesting still organizations to think about opportunities to start moving things out sooner from Eestimaja if they haven't done so already, especially things that are not actively used, so that we can avoid a situation where everybody's you know, crowded trying to move at once. So in terms of communications, the main contact on the transition planning side is Ingrid Laar, General Manager of Eesti Maja. And I think every organization has identified to Ingrid their key contact, but certainly if you haven't done so, please do that as well. We'll move on to the next slide. So this slide is really focused on the long term at KESKUS and what our understanding of the long-term priorities for the organizations are as far as use of KESKUS. And of course, the objective of KESKUS is to support the community and really for the community to be the lifeblood of the center. So we invite you all to provide input on whether these priorities are the right ones or whether anybody has suggestions on how they should be, how we should be thinking about these things differently. But the top priority that we're focused on is, as I mentioned earlier, affordability, and that is targeting a business model where there are nominal usage rates that are more reflective of some type of marginal cost for the use of the center rather than market rate, and really that the costs to the community groups can be made low and reflective of the financial wherewithal of the groups. The second priority is space availability and really providing a similar frequency and space availability as is currently used and on the preferred days that community groups wish to use KESKUS. The principle there is what we could describe as an Estonian first model, generally with preferential priority for Estonian community groups. And I should state that, of course, if we think about community activities or events, you could have some ambiguity if we're talking about an Estonian who wants to hold a private event at KESKUS or something like that. So that is something that we'll be thinking about as well, but it's not really what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is community groups that wish to use KESKUS. One note, though, is that what will probably happen is that we will have more rigid advanced scheduling than we've had at Eesti Maja, and that's due to the higher anticipated occupancy for the center. So presently at Eesti Maja, we've generally kind of blocked off spaces for groups. Of course, occasionally there have been needs to move things around a little bit, but for the most part, we've blocked off spaces for the community groups, the user groups, and basically haven't rented them out and have maintained sort of more flexibility on usage at Eesti Maja on a last minute basis. What will probably happen at KESKUS is that it'll take quite a bit of advanced planning to set in play an expected schedule, and then once we have those schedules, then we would try to fill up the spaces with commercial bookings that earn revenue for the center around that. So there may not be as much sort of last minute flexibility on usage of the space. Of course, that it all is part and parcel of the same puzzle, which is how do we make the center financially successful so that it brings in the kind of revenues that push down rates to very affordable levels for the community. So I'm not suggesting that it's going to be all out in terms of the monetization of the center for every opportunity to non-Estonian groups, but the principle is still very much going to be, from a planning perspective, let's make sure we can operate on an Estonian first basis. And then finally, on the storage side, we're also targeting providing adequate space for actively used materials and equipment. And this is something where we've been taking a look lately at whether there might be more creative opportunities to kind of expand storage in the center beyond just a storage room in the basement, which is probably the you know, the first place for storage. But the principle there is that the actively used materials that community groups need kind of on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis will we will hopefully be able to provide availability for all of that kind of storage on site. It is, I think, a tighter threshold than has historically been the case at Estonia. Of course, we're building the space to be used more so than for materials to be stored. So the hope would be that, you know, that each of the community groups thinks, you know, critically about storage and opportunities to save space, to digitize if possible, to you know, be able to operate efficiently from a storage perspective as much as is possible, while also, you know, being able to provide space for those things that are used on a regular basis. So what we may potentially be looking at is some sort of square footage based cost for storage. Again, the idea there being that it's, you know, nominal and affordable, but what we're trying to avoid is a situation like at Estonia where stuff starts to accumulate over a long period of time because it's just left in a corner somewhere and forgotten about, and then, you know, it just builds up over time. So that's really the goal that we'd like to avoid on the storage side. But again, this is just sort of directional. These things haven't been necessarily set in stone yet. Next slide. So the last slide covered some of the things that sort of we're looking at as the top priorities in terms of being able to accommodate the community groups. Aside from the affordability, the space slash scheduling, and the storage, there are some other really areas of opportunity and other priorities that we're kind of only starting to get into exploring as well. And really, I think a lot of these things are opportunities to do things better and, you know, more creatively and bigger and better than we've done at Estonia in the past. So it's a little bit of a high level list here of a whole bunch of things, but we're very welcoming of ideas that you all listening today or anybody else has on what other, you know, opportunities we might have to get even more out of Eesti KESKUS than we've gotten out of Estonia. So some of the areas to spur some thinking on that are technological improvements, you know, everything from having good Wi-Fi in the center to, you know, potentially webcasting and all kinds of, you know, technological opportunities like that. Space animation is really, really critical. We'd like KESKUS to be a vibrant and attractive space for gatherings, pop-up exhibitions, maybe design shops and so on, especially things that kind of can be mobile and flexible, you know, use online tools as well. And the idea there is that, you know, it's not just a place where somebody, you know, drops off their kid and then they leave for several hours, but really is a place that everybody is looking forward to going to, and this is kind of something for everybody there. So space animation is a very high priority for our team in terms of thinking about what the opportunities could be at KESKUS. Obviously, opportunities for collaboration with Tartu College being right next door, as well as VEMU and Estonian Studies Center being potentially in a position to hopefully collaborate with those organizations, you know, have more space availability for larger events, have some sort of space flexibility. Opportunities for collaboration with other non-ESTO facilities, spaces in the neighborhood, and cultural institutes. And I know that Ellen and others have already been looking at other non-ESTO facilities or areas, spaces in the neighborhood that we might be, you know, maybe we could strike a deal with them to be able to use some of their facilities. So if anyone has, you good ideas on that side, I think we'd be very open and welcome to hearing what those opportunities are that could be explored. Even things like other cultural institutions. I know there's been some initial discussions with the Goethe Institute and Alliance Française and other, that's another potential direction there as well. Opportunities for programming collaboration with Eesti and other Estonian communities abroad. That would be really neat to be able to use both technology as well as potentially on the ground support from Eesti and to build ties with Eesti and Estonian communities elsewhere. Of course, there's been lots of interest in KESKUS from abroad, as Lisa was pointing to, and indeed we saw that the Vancouver Eesti Celts, the Montreal Eesti Celts, Hamilton Eesti Celts were all donors to KESKUS. So there's certainly some interest in other communities outside of Toronto in being able to leverage what we're doing here. Opportunities to use KESKUS operating surpluses for new events that can support existing community activities as well. So if there's an operating surplus generated by the event space, how can we use that after we've covered all our costs and put money into a capital reserve fund to potentially do more from a event planning perspective, and specifically to support the community and the existing community activities that we already have. Dedicated drop-in space, open meetings for ongoing community use. So the idea here is that notwithstanding what I mentioned before about how we'd like to have a high level of utilization of the center that brings in revenues that support our financial plan, our business model. We are thinking about the idea that potentially there could be some spaces within the center, even if it's some spaces in the basement or somewhere, that would be kind of less rented out and more available on a last minute type basis, or relatively last minute, so that where a community group kind of decides it wants to meet or get together, there may be some space kind of quasi dedicated to that kind of those kinds of opportunities as well. Accessibility of the center regardless of mobility and limitations. That's something that Alar has been very focused on. I think it's obviously been an area of concern with Eesti Maja, as everybody knows, so it'll be a big priority at KESKUS. Access, pickup, drop-off considerations as well, both on Madison and potentially on Huron Street once the through block connection is complete, with the neighboring parcel being developed as well. And then potentially options for membership structures, which may allow for perks and benefits. So that's something that we haven't really explored too much, but we've thought about a little bit, is whether there could be some type of options where people sign up to be members of KESKUS, which is not necessarily the same as as the ownership structure, like the shareholder structure with Eesti Maja, but maybe being an annual member of KESKUS can afford you some types of perks. That's another area of opportunity. So it's really a long list. There's a lot of exciting opportunities and ways that they could go and things we could look into. So like I said, if folks listening have some good ideas of their own, either in the chat box here at today's meeting, or at in the future, especially hopefully once we start to have more in-person gatherings, we'd very much like to hear everyone's good ideas. And we've got the info at address as well, which I think is on a coming slide for people to submit ideas electronically as well. Next slide. So I'll wrap up here with a next step slide before we get to Q&As. Over fall 2021, the initial focus really is on concluding the commercial leases, which I talked about before. And the reason for that is, again, getting those in place so that we can have a sense of a baseline level of assurance of the center's core finances, which then opens us up to start looking at the finances for the other two pillars. And then what we would be looking to do is to schedule one-on-one discussions with each community group that regularly uses Eesti Maja to discuss things like finances, mechanisms for scheduling spaces in KESKUS, storage considerations, and some of those potential new opportunities at KESKUS. I've already basically provided a background on what some of those key topics are. So if people listening on the call don't have all of the ideas or questions or thoughts in mind right now, then I encourage everybody to take that away and think about what the priorities for your organization are, and then we would be coming back with some of those one-on-one discussions. And then logistics planning based on the best information, and hoping to achieve some concrete clarity on the leaseback and on the one move option. And finally, a thought that we had, and we'd be interested in whether others are interested in this type of idea as well, but potentially holding either a suursaal or a parking lot surplus goods sale to sell off some of the stuff that somebody might be interested in, but it's not necessarily a core need for either Eesti Maja or for community groups going forward. So that may be something that we would look to schedule in fall or the spring, depending on whether that is also of interest to the community groups. And just a final note there, of course, a lot of things are still fluid. They're not settled yet, and it means there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of chances for creative thinking, but also means there's not necessarily complete information just yet on everything. So as we start to get further along the process and are able to refine the models and have better information, then we'll all be able to better plan as well. So thanks very much. That concludes my presentation, and I think I'll turn it back to Ellen.
Aitäh, Veiko. So thank you very much. Aitäh kuulamast ja järgmise korrani.